There is a particular kind of vehicle that exists at the edges of the modern world. Not quite fast enough to belong to the highway age, not quite obsolete enough to have disappeared. You have seen it, or something like it, even if you cannot immediately name what it was. A lorry. A truck loaded so heavily with raw sugarcane stalks that the load towers above the cab, tied loosely, leaning slightly, moving through the landscape at a speed that belongs to a different century. The Sugarcane Lorry. Slow, enormous, fragrant, with something green and sweet and slightly fermented, and completely, stubbornly, magnificently out of place in a world obsessed with efficiency.
Sugarcane itself is one of the oldest cultivated crops on Earth. Its origins trace back to New Guinea, perhaps 10,000 years ago, where people first learned to chew the raw stalk and extract its sweetness. From there, it spread through Southeast Asia, through India, through the Arab world, through the Mediterranean, and then carried by colonizers across the Atlantic into the Caribbean and the Americas, where it would reshape the history of the world in ways both magnificent and catastrophic. Sugar, in a very real sense, is one of the engines of modernity. It drove trade routes. It drove the construction of entire economies. It drove, most horrifyingly, the slave trade. The sweetness in your tea has a long and complicated history, and the sugarcane lorry trundling down a rural road is one of the last visible threads of that history still moving through the present.
The lorry, or lorry, as it is known in Malaysia, Indonesia, and parts of Southeast Asia where sugarcane cultivation still operates at the pace of the soil rather than the pace of the market, is a specific kind of working vehicle. Not glamorous, not optimized. The cab is usually old, the paint faded and sun-battered, the exhaust visible. The load of cane stalks extends beyond any dimension that a highway regulator would comfortably approve. And yet it moves. Every harvest season, it moves. From field to mill, from mill to processing plant, it carries the raw material of sweetness through landscapes that still remember when ox carts made this same journey on the same roads.
There is a sound that a sugarcane lorry makes when it is fully loaded and moving slowly uphill. The engine labors. You can hear the effort in it, a deep, grinding, completely unhurried protest against gravity and load. And from the back of the lorry, as it moves, loose cane stalks sometimes slide and bounce on the road behind it. Small pieces of raw cane, still green, still fibrous, landing in the dust. Children in villages along these roads have known for generations that following the sugarcane lorry means finding pieces of cane to chew. The sweetness is free. It falls off the back of the harvest and into the road, and you only have to pick it up.
In Malaysia, the sugarcane industry has a specific geography. The northern states, particularly Perlis, the smallest state in the federation tucked against the Thai border, are the heartland of Malaysian sugarcane cultivation. The flatland, the warm, wet climate, the long growing season, these conditions produce cane with a high sugar content, harvested and sent to mills that process it into raw sugar before it enters the national supply chain. The lorries that carry this cane are a familiar sight on the roads of Perlis and Kedah during harvest season. Slow, loaded, unavoidable. They hold up traffic and nobody really minds because everyone in those states understands what the lorry is carrying and why it matters.
The sugarcane mill is where the lorry is going, and it is worth understanding what a sugarcane mill actually is. It is a place of total transformation. The raw cane stalk, which looks like a green bamboo pole, fibrous and hollow and unprocessed, enters the mill and is crushed between enormous iron rollers. The juice that comes out is gray-green and foamy and smells like something between fresh grass and molasses. It is nothing like sugar yet. It is the raw beginning of sugar. It has to be clarified, evaporated, crystallized, centrifuged, and dried before it becomes the white granules that sit in your kitchen. The distance between a cane stalk on a lorry and a spoonful of sugar in your morning coffee is enormous, and the lorry is the bridge between those two worlds. But the sugarcane lorry is also disappearing, or rather, it is changing into something that is efficient enough to survive the economics of the 21st century, but has lost the particular quality that made it something more than a vehicle. Modern sugarcane logistics in larger producing countries, Brazil, India, Thailand, increasingly relies on specialized harvesting machines that cut and strip the cane in the field, conveyor loading it directly into purpose-built trailers pulled by powerful tractors. The old image of workers cutting cane by hand with machetes, loading it by hand onto old lorries, is becoming a relic. The machine is faster. The machine is more profitable. The machine does not drop pieces of cane on the road for children to pick up and chew.
There is a concept in economics called externalities, costs or benefits that exist outside the formal accounting of a transaction. The Sugarcane Lorry, in its slow and inefficient passage through the rural landscape, generated enormous externalities that never appeared on any balance sheet. The loose cane pieces that fell to the road, the conversation it forced when it held up traffic and a driver had to stop and wait and perhaps roll down the window and smell the green sweetness in the air, the way it marked the season. Harvest time, cane time, the particular quality of light in the late afternoon on a road lined with tall sugarcane stalks. These are not things that appear in a cost per ton mile calculation, but they are real. And when the efficient machine replaces the slow lorry, these externalities do not become zero. They simply become losses that nobody officially counts.
In Japanese aesthetics, there is a concept called mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of impermanence, the particular emotional quality of things that are beautiful precisely because they are passing. Cherry blossoms are the most famous example. They are most beautiful at the moment they are about to fall. The Sugarcane Lorry is a kind of mono no aware vehicle. It is most itself, most worth noticing, most resonant with meaning at the moment when its era is ending. And we are living in that moment. The slow lorry, the loaded cane, the engine laboring uphill, the loose stalks falling in the dust. This is the cherry blossom of a particular kind of agricultural life.
There is a relationship between the Sugarcane Lorry and time that deserves attention. The lorry operates on agricultural time, the time of the harvest, which comes when the cane is ready and not a day before. It does not operate on market time or logistics time or the time of the app that tells you your delivery will arrive in the next 4-hour window. Agricultural time is patient in a way that economic time refuses to be. The cane grows when it grows. The harvest happens when it must. The lorry moves when it is loaded, and the mill processes what arrives when it arrives. There is a wisdom in this sequencing that the modern supply chain has optimized away, and something important was lost in that optimization. The people who drive these lorries have an expertise that is almost invisible. They know how to load a sugarcane lorry so that the tall, unstable pile of stalks holds together across 20 kilometers of rural road without cascading into a disaster. They know the specific capabilities and limits of vehicles that are often decades old, held together by mechanical knowledge and improvised repair rather than factory maintenance schedules. They know the roads, which corners require a wide turn, which bridges have weight limits that must be quietly disregarded, which sections of tarmac have softened in the heat and must be crossed slowly to avoid sinking. This knowledge is not written anywhere. It lives in the bodies of the drivers and will retire with them. Let us talk about sugar itself for a moment, because the lorry is ultimately in service of one of the most powerful substances in human history. Sugar is, neurologically, a reward signal. It triggers dopamine release. The brain registers sweetness as a signal of caloric safety. In an environment of scarcity, sweetness meant energy, meant survival. We evolved to love sugar because sweetness in the natural world was rare and valuable. And then we built an entire global agricultural and industrial complex to make it abundant and cheap. The Sugarcane Lorry is one of the earliest links in the chain that converts a neurological reward signal into a commodity available in every shop in every city on Earth. The distance between the cane field and the candy wrapper is shorter than you think, and the lorry is what crosses that distance first. There are photographs from the colonial sugar plantations of the Caribbean and the Indian Ocean that show early versions of the sugarcane lorry. Actually, at that time, sugarcane railway wagons, small, narrow-gauge cars that ran on tracks laid through the plantation fields, loaded with cut cane and pulled by small steam locomotives to the mill. These plantation railways were some of the first industrial railways in tropical regions. They were built not for passengers, but for cane. The crop required the infrastructure, and the infrastructure reshaped the landscape. Islands in the Caribbean still have the ghost traces of these plantation railways. Abandoned tracks, rusted equipment, the outline of the mill buildings against the sky. The modern lorry on the Malaysian road is the descendant of those plantation wagons. The form changed. The purpose remained.
What does it mean to be the last vehicle carrying something ancient into the modern world? The Sugarcane Lorry does not know it is symbolic. It does not perform its slow passage with any awareness of what it represents. It simply moves, loaded, laboring, fragrant, unhurried, from the field to the mill, as it has moved every harvest season for as long as anyone in those villages can remember. It does not need to know it is beautiful. It does not need to understand that the children watching it pass, or the drivers waiting behind it on a narrow road, are experiencing something that will be genuinely rare within a generation. The lorry just drives, and we are the ones who must decide whether to notice.
The next time you see a sugarcane lorry, or any slow, loaded vehicle carrying something raw and unprocessed through a world of speed, do not be in a hurry for it to move out of your way. Roll down the window. Smell what it is carrying. Watch how the stalks are loaded, how the driver navigates the turn, how the loose pieces fall and land in the dust of the road. You are watching the first chapter of something that will end on your table in a form you will not recognize. And there is something worth keeping in that knowledge. Subscribe if you find meaning in the things the world is about to forget. And tell me in the comments, what is the sugarcane lorry in your life? What slow, fragrant, overlooked thing carries the most important things forward?
If you are the kind of person who slows down when a sugarcane lorry holds up the road ahead of you, if something in you does not immediately feel frustration, but instead feels a strange, unnameable recognition, then you already understand what this video has been trying to say. There are things in the world that move slowly, not because they have failed to modernize, but because their slowness is the point. Their pace is the last remaining honest measurement of how long something actually takes, from the moment a seed goes into soil to the moment sweetness dissolves on a tongue. The lorry is that measurement, and when it is gone, we will have lost not just a vehicle, but a way of knowing how far we have traveled from the source of what we consume.